Rhythm of Life Community Chorus. Welcome back to my office for another week of skills sessions. It was so good to see some of you last week at Dion's place. Thanks again to Dion for hosting a little socially distanced get together. I hope to see some of you next week at Sarah's place. Just good to stay connected during these times. I apologize if you're watching these videos. I was not able to make one last week, just got a little too busy. So back this week for week 4, and we're going to talk about articulation, which is a fun thing for me to talk about, but also, I don't want to say controversial. It's just so much gray area, and there's so much that's subjective. I've heard people argue about these things. So if you disagree with me on something, or if you're confused about something, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Open a discussion if you just want to get nerdy with it. That's what I like to do. So if you're like, what is articulation? There are probably hundreds of definitions and a lot of gray area. I'm just going to say that it's what flavor is that note? Is it a little bit heavier? Is it going to be sharp and kind of lightly articulated? Are we going for a heavier feel? And then it's also going, I guess it's about the onset of the pitch, how you initially attack the pitch. And then it's also the duration of the pitch. Sometimes articulation markings will make the pitch longer. Sometimes it'll make it shorter. So to me, it's just kind of what flavor is that note? And as vocalists, I find that it's a secondary concept. So when we're reading through music, we're usually going for notes and rhythms and words, hopefully. And then at some point we go, oh, now that I have the notes and rhythms, this is staccato, we should make it short. Or dynamics as well. That's mezzo forte, that's piano. So I think that when people are reading, vocalists, I think that we make that a secondary concept. Like, we can figure out how it's supposed to be sung after we've figured out how to sing it. And I think, like instrumentalists, you can give them a bunch of notes and rhythms, but if you don't mark exactly how you want it articulated, they're going to look at it and be like, well, what do you want? Like, I know that these are the notes and the rhythms, but like, how do you want me to play it? And it's one of those things I think vocalists should just be like more particular about upon reading, because I think it'll save rehearsal time. And it also makes you feel more successful, because you might be reading, we've all been there where you're reading and you just sing all kinds of wrong notes and you're like, that felt really bad. But if you sing all those right notes or all those wrong notes, but you sing it forte like it's written and it's marked staccato and you sing them nice and short, you just got 50% of it, right? You were actually more correct by getting the right articulation than if you just kind of wait till later. So I get off my soapbox, but that's the idea. That's the thing that I always challenge people to do, is just read it with the correct articulation, and then we can fix notes, but you already have 50% of the musical elements down. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these articulations in particular. So I think when we're singing, the default is legato, because it's such a legato and smooth instrument. So if we don't see any articulation marked, my idea is to keep it nice and smooth and connected, is what legato means. When I was a teacher, I always used to have this kid say, legato smooth. So they would kind of remember that that's what that means. And again, that's just kind of the default. So you would never want to sing like note, 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 note. You would go note, 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 nice and connected. Sometimes it will be specified like this. They'll have a slur, or a phrase marking, which will let you know to connect all these. The reason why it's kind of confusing is because that doesn't always mean the same thing. So a slur for a clarinet player is going to mean not retongue. So ta, whereas if they didn't have that, it'd be ta, 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 ta. For us, sometimes it will show a melisma. A melisma is just more than one note per syllable. So let's say we're singing something like, where are you? Do you see how where got 3 notes and then are you got their own notes? So that's all that means. In fact, sometimes you will see something like this. Where are you? So you see how this the slur um, didn't actually mean legato. So that's where context is going to help us out. Sometimes you'll even see something like this, where it says, where are you? So you know that this is showing the melisma, and then this is showing the phrase as a whole. Kind of confusing, but I think that if you use context to help you out, and then also if you're confused, you just raise your hand, or if you're at home, you can shoot me a phone call or an email. Moving on, staccato. I just gave this a very generic definition because it's kind of generic, and this is where context will help a lot. Staccato just means shorter than written, but that could mean ta, 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 with just a little bit of space in between. It could mean as short as possible, ta, 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 ta. Obviously, it helps to have somebody who has studied the score. That's usually my job, is to understand to interpret the score and then share that interpretation with you. So I will usually have an answer. Hopefully you never have a director that's like, I don't know, we generally have opinions about that, but upon sight reading, you can just know that that's gonna be a little bit shorter. And then on the third read through, I could say, oh, I think we're giving it too much space. We want it to be short, but not that short. And then you can write something in. But I think if you read it and give it a little bit more space, we're already halfway there, right? An accent is just a harder attack with a decay. Oh my gosh, I wrote attach. How embarrassing. So that could mean ta, ta, ta. It could mean like a huge accent with a lot of decay. It could mean just like a little bit of weight with a little bit of space. Again, that could mean lots of different things, and that's generally the person who studies the score. It's their job to kind of share that with you. But if you're sight reading and you give it a little bit more accent, we're good. We're good. We can kind of get a little bit more nitpicky from there. Tenuto, this is by far the most problematic one because it technically just means full note value, but sometimes that full note value means rubato, so longer, we elongate the note. And then sometimes it just means more emphasis or weight. So sometimes if you see it just on one note, or even you'll see the word tenuto, sometimes it'll be treated kind of like a fermata, this guy down here, which we'll talk about. This could just mean each note gets ta, 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 just a little bit of weight. Sometimes we'll see it for syllabic stress. Where they say we want this to be, like let's say the words are, how are you today? And they want the emphasis to be on you. So it'd be like, there wouldn't be a tenuto, but just one right here. So it'd be, how are you today? So we know that that's the most important word for the composer. It could mean a lot of things, but that's where context will help. So I think upon reading, you just make your best guess, and then we'll likely chat about it. But that one is by far the most subjective. Marcato just means a heavier accent. So if you see this and this in the same piece, you know that they're just being really specific, that this is just gonna be heavier or more sharp, perhaps with a larger decay. Staccatissimo, because I use the free version of Sibelius, they don't actually give me the option to show you staccatissimo. So I'll just show you here on Google. It's gonna be this little guy. Kind of just looks like a little sharpened carrot head or something. And that's just gonna be a more extreme version of this staccato, right? So it's oftentimes gonna be shorter, maybe a little bit more light or crisp, maybe would be a good word. And then I just want to talk, this one, I think most of us know this is a fermata. Excuse me. It just means that if there's a conductor in front of you, you hold the note as long as the conductor wants. If you're performing as a soloist, then you get to decide how long that is. If you're in a chamber group, like 4 people, then you decide as a group how long you're going to hold that, but usually there's a leader. But I think most of you know that. And then other times you'll see something like this, where it's staccato tenuto. And if you look at our definitions for staccato and our definitions for tenuto, you're like, well, that's extremely contradictory and makes no sense. It generally just means a little bit of separation. So not quite a full staccato. But that's another one where I've seen people full on get into arguments about what that means. So it's good to just have an idea, and then if you have questions, we can chat about it. But you can see where all these get a little sticky, and sometimes someone might say, well, I believe this should be this kind of a staccato. And some people would be like, I believe it should be this kind of a staccato. I've seen people draw pictures of exactly how long the decay should be. You know, music people can be a little neurotic about these things. So yeah, I hope that helps. If you're thinking about another way, think about like when you're teaching young ones to read and write. Sometimes if they read the sentence, how are you today? And there's the question mark. And we know that question mark kind of colors how you say, how are you today? How are you today? How are you doing today? You know? If a first grader is reading and they go, how are you today? And you're like, well, you read all the right words, got all the right sounds in there, but I think you kind of missed the meaning of the sentence. And so to me, like da dee dum bum is a completely different thing than ba dum beep bum bum or ba ba beep dum bum. I just gave you 3 different ways to do it, and to me, they all say completely different things, even though they're the same notes. So it's important. It's important to me, at least. Oh, real fast, I wanted to talk about articulation. If you're an overzealous kind of person like I am, sometimes I'm in a choir and I'm like, they're not doing a staccato, so I'm going to overdo the staccato or something to like prove a point or get them to be more, because I'm whatever. I get overzealous and I use my voice for the articulation when it really should come from the core, right, from our breathing mechanisms, because that can actually cause a lot of fatigue and probably some vocal damage if you're always coming from here. So don't be like me. Use your brain, have some self-control. And so in other words, we always want to do what the composer wrote, but never at the expense of our vocal technique and our vocal health, which I'm not always the best model for doing that. Sometimes I just get too excited about things. And then the other thing I really wanted to talk about quickly is performance practice, historical performance rep. If we're doing a piece from the Baroque era, like a Bach piece perhaps, or even like something from early classical, Haydn or something, they didn't have all these markings that we have that I just showed you. But as we'll just say historically informed performance practice, we know that like Mozart, you're not going to sing all of that legato. If you've heard Mozart's Requiem, you're not going to sing it. It's going to be nice and so that's where somebody who's studied the score or studied a lot of Mozart can sit there and say, this is exactly how that rep needs to go. And then you could say, boom, I'm writing that down so that next time we talk about this piece, I remember, ooh, staccato, 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 tenuto, right? So that's a great musicianship skill that you can use for music to just inform yourself more about music that you might not otherwise know about. So yeah, so good stuff, lots of fun. Lots of fun little things there. Let me know if you have any questions as per usual. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Next week, I'm excited. Pam has asked that I cover some vocal stuff. So I'm gonna do some range extension warm-ups and that kind of stuff. So thanks for the suggestion, Pam. And everybody else, if you're like, hey, I really want to work on this or talk about this, feel free to shoot me an email. I want to make this enjoyable, but also useful for you. So yeah, let me know. Rhythm of Life, Prof. Ballard signing off. I love you to death. Happy Monday.